when you think of Ghostbusters,
Mhm.
you think of the characters, but then you also think of the iconic scene, right? And the iconic scene is the Marshmallow Man, right? Like when people think of the Marshmallow Man and Ghostbusters, like those two things are synonymous in some ways, and it's like
Mhm.
a absolutely absurd idea. And that was actually one of the very strong. That is one of the scenes that came from the very beginning, even when this was supposed to be like a more serious movie, according to my sources, which were Wikipedia. So take that as you will. But there you go, guys. My secrets are revealed. The okay, I just need to say what's going on in my brain and then throw it out there. But the Ghostbusters has this Marshmallow Man scene, which is hilarious and has a lot iconic about it. And I think
Mhm.
that's part of what makes it a cult classic is you have these very iconic scenes that won't be forgotten, right? In some ways, Star Wars has that same cult classic aspect to it because it has things like the very classic "Luke, I am your father" scene, right?
Mhm.
Everyone knows "Luke, I am your father" because of how well that scene was done and how much that sticks in our mind, right? The strong metal hand of Darth Vader, looking down at his son. And then, in this one you have the Marshmallow Man. In other scenes you have other movies, uh, or other scenes in other movies, excuse me. But anyways, I think that there's something about the actual presentation that makes it. Uh, they present something that's very unique. I also thought that the possession scene was pretty unique. Like I thought I will probably think of that anytime I think of Ghostbusters in the future because of how ridiculous that was. But maybe that's what goes for this X factor for movies is that they add these scenes that are so iconic that even if they don't necessarily make for a great story, they make for a memorable story, right? And
Mhm.
maybe that's
Yeah.
maybe going more into the marketing of the movie where the movie has something that's so eye-catching and memorable that you can't help but think about it when you think of the movie, right? Or
Mhm.
even might make the case for the ugly green one that constantly shows up and just eats tons of food, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't
The
know. Like
Slimer
those,
guy.
yeah, the Slimer. He's also somewhat stereotypical for the movie. So or for Ghostbusters. So there's things like that, right? That I think could. That's my argument for why this is a cult classic. Is that it has these iconic scenes that
Mhm.
exist that are so almost absurd that yes, I don't think it adds to the storyline in a compelling way, but it's so out there that it's memorable.
Mhm. Okay.
Now,
Um.
here's the maybe response to what you said earlier, and then we'll see if you agree or disagree. But the I think if you're dealing with a cult classic, something that the way you were describing it, if the value that it adds at its time is truly valuable, if it's more or less the way I'm going with this, if it's a valuable addition to its time that affects things after it, it's going to it's not going to stick around. It's going to be a cult classic for 20, 40, 60 years maybe, and then after that it's completely gone out of the cultural understanding
Hmm.
versus a something that would have more of a timeless value. And so I think that maybe a cult classic shouldn't have reoccurring viewers in the same way that something else would that has
Hmm.
a more memorable story.
Maybe. I mean, I'll admit, like, there is a clear difference between this and like your cut run of the mill like action movie or whatever, like your run of the
Hmm.
mill like average story. So I mean, there is definitely like, and I would argue, and like I think there is something to be said about genre, where it's like how story is impacted by the genre. It's trying like what its intention is. Like with a
Hmm.
comedy, the intention isn't to make a great story. Generally, it's supposed to be to make you laugh, to make something funny, or take put things
Hmm.
in a humorous light.
Right.
Uh, Now you can have themes and ideas and conflict like you can have like these overarching messages in stories and such, like even in
Hmm.
comedies. Um, but I feel like for some reason I'm thinking of Tag right now, the movie Tag. Like, I feel like there are some very strong like messages in there about friendship and like
Right.
that kind of thing. But in growing up, like it does like retaining those friendships as you get older. But
Hmm.
but Ghostbusters doesn't have that, and so like maybe and like just trying to think this through. But and I guess maybe there's something you said about iconic scenes, like the Marshmallow Man scene.
Hmm.
Um, so and maybe that's it. It's yeah, I don't really know what else like because a cult class like this is one of those subjects like I kind of want to discuss more about, but it almost feels like it needs to be its own thing, like its own discussion, where it's like diving deep into what makes a cult classic stand out from your other movies, like because some of
Hmm.
them aren't that great, like story wise, but they're really strong in other areas, and it's like okay, like why does this one stick around for as long as it like why is it stuck around so long? Why has it retained like the small segment of the population as an audience, as a fandom?